In myths and legends across the world, there's a figure that keeps reappearing, a shapeshifter, a rule breaker, a clever manipulator who dances on the edge of order and chaos. Whether it's Loki weaving mischief in Norse tales, Anansi spinning webs of cunning in African folklore, or Hermes darting between gods and mortals in Greek mythology, tricksters are everywhere. They're the ones who disrupt the status quo, challenge authority, and often leave chaos in their wake. But here's the twist: despite their reputation as troublemakers, these figures aren't just agents of disorder. They're also catalysts for change, pushing boundaries and forcing societies to adapt, grow, and question their own rules. So why do cultures across the globe keep telling stories about these unpredictable, often infuriating characters? What is it about the trickster that makes them so compelling, so universal? In this video, we'll dive into the fascinating world of trickster figures, exploring their dual roles as creators of chaos and agents of transformation. We'll uncover why they've become such enduring symbols in human storytelling, and how their legacy continues to shape the way we think about order, rebellion, and the power of wit. This isn't just a journey through myths, it's a deeper look at what these figures reveal about us, our societies, and the stories we tell to make sense of the world. Now, let's step into the fascinating world of the trickster archetype, a figure that appears in myths and legends across the globe, weaving chaos and wisdom in equal measure. At their core, tricksters are rebels, rule breakers, and shape-shifters who thrive on defying expectations. They're the ones who challenge authority, question the status quo, and blur the lines between what's right and wrong, often leaving us to wonder whether their actions are mischievous or profound. Take Loki, for example, the infamous Norse god whose cunning knows no bounds. Whether he's stirring up trouble among the gods or outsmarting giants, Loki's antics often disrupt the natural order, but they also force the gods to confront their flaws and grow stronger. Then there's Anansi, the trickster spider of West African folklore, whose cleverness is unmatched. Anansi uses his wit not just to outsmart others, but to teach valuable lessons about resourcefulness and adaptability. And who could forget Hermes, the quick-footed messenger of the Greek gods? With his charm and ingenuity, Hermes bridges the gap between mortals and immortals, embodying the trickster's ability to navigate between worlds. What makes these figures so compelling is their dual nature. They're not heroes in the traditional sense, nor are they purely villains. Instead, they exist in the gray areas of morality, challenging rigid structures and forcing societies to question their own rules. By breaking boundaries, tricksters often bring about change, sometimes chaotic, sometimes essential. They remind us that progress often requires disruption, and that wisdom can come from the most unexpected places. As we explore these tricksters further, it's worth noting how their roles vary across cultures. While Loki might embody the darker side of mischief, Anansi's stories often carry a light-hearted, even humorous tone. And Hermes, he's the quintessential mediator, blending wit with diplomacy. These differences reflect the unique values and fears of the societies that created them, offering a window into how cultures perceive chaos, change, and the human condition. So, as we dive deeper into the tales of these boundary crossers, keep an eye out for the subtle ways they challenge norms, spark transformation, and leave their indelible mark on the myths they inhabit. Their stories are more than just entertaining, they're a reflection of the complexities of life itself. Now, let's turn our attention to Loki, one of the most fascinating and enigmatic figures in Norse mythology. Born to giants but living among the gods of Asgard, Loki occupies a unique and often contradictory position. He's not quite one of the Aesir gods, yet he's not entirely an outsider either. This duality defines his character, making him both a trusted ally and a dangerous adversary to the gods. Loki's relationship with the gods is complicated, to say the least. On one hand, he's a clever problem solver, often coming to the rescue with his quick wit and cunning. Take the story of Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, for example. When the giant Thrym steals it and demands the goddess Freyja as ransom, Loki devises a plan to retrieve it. He convinces Thor to disguise himself as Freyja, and together they trick Thrym, reclaiming the hammer and saving the day. In moments like these, Loki proves himself indispensable to the gods, but don't let his helpful side fool you. Loki is equally capable of causing chaos. His mischief often stems from deeper motivations: jealousy, ambition, and a craving for recognition. One of the most tragic examples of this is the death of Baldur, the beloved god of light. Baldur's invincibility makes him a symbol of purity and perfection, which seems to provoke Loki's resentment. When the gods playfully test Baldur's immunity, Loki discovers the one weakness, a mistletoe dart, and orchestrates Baldur's death by tricking the blind god Hodder into throwing it. This act of betrayal marks a turning point in Loki's story, revealing the darker side of his trickster nature. Loki's actions ultimately lead to his downfall and the catastrophic events of Ragnarok, the Norse apocalypse. After his role in Baldur's death, the gods punish him by binding him in a cave with a venomous serpent dripping poison onto his face. His wife, Sigyn, tries to ease his suffering, but Loki's torment only fuels his rage. When Ragnarok arrives, Loki breaks free and joins the forces of chaos, leading to the destruction of the gods and the world as they know it. Yet, even in this destruction, there's a sense of renewal. Loki's role as a harbinger of chaos is symbolic. His actions pave the way for a new cycle of creation, reminding us that destruction and rebirth are often intertwined. What makes Loki so compelling is his unpredictability. He's not purely evil, nor is he entirely good. Instead, he embodies the gray areas of human nature, our capacity for both creativity and destruction, loyalty and betrayal. His story challenges us to reflect on the consequences of our own actions and the fine line between mischief and malice. As we move forward, it's worth noting how Loki's chaotic tendencies contrast with other trickster figures, who often use their cunning for more constructive purposes. Where Loki's mischief leads to destruction, others, like Anansi or Hermes, tend to leave behind lessons or innovations. This balance between chaos and creation is a recurring theme in trickster mythology, one that we'll explore further as we delve into the stories of these other fascinating characters. Now, let's turn our attention to Anansi, the legendary spider trickster from West African folklore. Unlike the chaotic mischief of Loki or the quick-witted cunning of Hermes, Anansi embodies a unique blend of cleverness and creativity, often using his wits to navigate challenges and teach valuable lessons. At the heart of Anansi's stories is a deep connection to storytelling itself, so much so that one of his most famous tales revolves around how he brought stories to humanity. In this well-loved myth, Anansi sets out to retrieve a box of stories from the sky god Niamh, who has hoarded them away from humans. Niamh, however, sets a series of seemingly impossible tasks as the price for the stories. With his cunning and resourcefulness, Anansi manages to outsmart Niamh, sometimes with the help of his family, and secures the stories for the world. This act not only cements Anansi's role as a cultural hero, but also highlights the power of storytelling as a tool for education and connection. What makes Anansi particularly fascinating is his dual nature. On one hand, he's a trickster who isn't above using deceit to achieve his goals. On the other, he's a teacher, weaving moral lessons into his exploits. His tales often explore themes like humility, resourcefulness, and the importance of working together, lessons that resonate across cultures and generations. Through his adventures, Anansi becomes more than just a clever spider. He's a symbol of resilience and ingenuity, Anansi's stories were traditionally passed down through oral traditions, told by griots, the keepers of history and culture in West African societies. These tales traveled far beyond their origins, carried by the African diaspora to the Caribbean, the Americas, and beyond. In places like Jamaica and the southern United States, Anansi evolved into figures like Biara Rabbit, maintaining his role as a trickster who outsmarts stronger foes. This cultural endurance speaks to the timelessness of his stories and their ability to adapt to new contexts. What sets Anansi apart from other tricksters is his emphasis on wisdom. While Loki thrives on chaos and Hermes on speed and wit, Anansi's tricks often serve a greater purpose, teaching, uniting, or empowering. His cleverness isn't just for personal gain, it's a means of uplifting others. This contrast makes Anansi not only a fascinating figure in mythology, but also a reminder of the power of stories to shape our understanding of the world. As we move forward, we'll explore how these tricksters, with their unique traits and lessons, continue to influence modern culture and storytelling. But for now, let's savor the richness of Anansi's tales, a testament to the enduring legacy of oral traditions and the universal appeal of a good story. Now, let's turn our attention to Hermes, the Greek god who effortlessly straddles the line between chaos and order. Known as the swift-footed messenger of the gods, Hermes is a figure of incredible versatility, embodying roles that range from divine courier to cunning trickster. But what makes him truly fascinating is how he weaves these seemingly contradictory traits into a single, cohesive identity. One of the most iconic tales of Hermes' trickery begins when he's just a newborn. Imagine this: mere hours after his birth, he sneaks out of his cradle, steals Apollo's sacred cattle, and then, in a stroke of genius, invents the lyre from a tortoise shell to soothe Apollo's anger. This story isn't just about mischief, it's a masterclass in wit and resourcefulness. Hermes doesn't just deceive, he creates, negotiates, and ultimately transforms a tense situation into an opportunity for connection. It's this blend of cleverness and charm that sets him apart from other tricksters. But Hermes isn't just a prankster or a thief. He's also a guide, a protector of travelers, merchants, and even souls journeying to the underworld. In this role, he becomes a liminal figure, someone who navigates the boundaries between worlds. Whether it's delivering messages from Mount Olympus to Earth or escorting the dead to the afterlife, Hermes is the ultimate mediator. His ability to move between realms makes him a symbol of transformation and communication, bridging gaps that others cannot cross. What's particularly intriguing about Hermes is the duality of his nature. On one hand, he's a trickster who delights in outsmarting others, but on the other, he's a benevolent figure who uses his cunning to help and protect. This duality reflects a broader theme in mythology, the idea that tricksters often serve as catalysts for change, pushing boundaries and challenging the status quo. Hermes' trickery isn't destructive, it's transformative, often leading to growth or new understanding. When we compare Hermes to a trickster like Loki, the contrast is striking. While Loki's antics often spiral into chaos and destruction, Hermes' mischief tends to have a more constructive edge. Sure, he'll pull a fast one on you, but there's usually a purpose behind it, a lesson, a resolution, or even a gift. His actions remind us that tricksters aren't just agents of disorder. They can also be agents of progress, pushing us to see the world in new ways. So, the next time you think of Hermes, picture him not just as a sly thief or a swift messenger, but as a figure who embodies the complexities of human nature. He's a reminder that life is full of boundaries to cross, messages to deliver, and transformations to embrace, all with a little bit of wit and a whole lot of charm. Trickster figures are everywhere across continents, cultures, and centuries. Whether it's the clever coyote in Native American traditions, the mischievous kitsune in Japanese folklore, or the shape-shifting Loki in Norse mythology, these characters seem to pop up in stories all over the world. But why? What is it about tricksters that makes them so universally fascinating? The answer lies in their unique ability to reflect the societies that created them. Tricksters aren't just characters in stories, they're cultural mirrors revealing the values, fears, and aspirations of the people who tell their tales. Take Coyote, for example. In many Native American traditions, Coyote is a figure of both chaos and creation. He's the one who breaks the rules, steals fire, or tricks the gods' actions that often lead to unexpected consequences. Through his antics, Coyote challenges authority and exposes the flaws in the systems around him. He's not just a troublemaker, he's a catalyst for change, forcing his community to question what they take for granted. Similarly, in Japanese mythology, the kitsune, a fox spirit known for its cunning and magical abilities, embodies the tension between the natural and supernatural worlds. Kitsune stories often explore themes of deception and transformation, but they also serve as a way to examine human behavior. Are the fox spirits truly deceitful, or are they simply revealing the hidden truths of the humans they interact with? These tales invite us to think about the boundaries between good and evil, truth and illusion. What's striking about tricksters is their ability to adapt to different cultural contexts. In African folklore, Anansi the spider weaves webs of stories that are as much about survival as they are about mischief. His cleverness helps him navigate a world where power is often stacked against the weak. Meanwhile, in Greek mythology, Hermes uses his wit and charm to bridge the gap between gods and mortals, acting as a messenger who can navigate both worlds with ease. These figures don't just entertain, they challenge us. They question the status quo, poke fun at authority, and remind us that the world isn't always as black and white as it seems. In a way, tricksters are the ultimate rebels characters who inspire us to think creatively, to question norms, and to embrace the messy, unpredictable nature of life. So, what does this say about the cultures that created them? Tricksters often emerge in societies facing change or uncertainty. They embody the tension between tradition and innovation, order and chaos. By laughing at their antics, we confront our own fears and desires, finding a way to make sense of a complicated world. And that's why, no matter where you go, you'll find a trickster waiting in the stories, ready to challenge, inspire, and remind us of the power of imagination. Trickster figures are far more than just mischievous troublemakers. They are catalysts for change, shaking up the world around them and forcing societies to evolve. Take Loki, for instance. In Norse mythology, his role in triggering Ragnarok, the apocalyptic battle, isn't just about destruction. It's about tearing down an old order to make way for something new. Loki's actions, while chaotic, ultimately lead to the rebirth of the world, a cycle of death and renewal that mirrors the natural order of things. His disruption isn't senseless, it's necessary, pushing the gods and their world to confront their flaws and adapt to a new reality. Similarly, in West African folklore, Anansi the spider doesn't just play tricks for fun, he reshapes the world in profound ways. One famous tale tells of how Anansi outsmarts the sky god Niamh to obtain the world's stories which had been hoarded away. By redistributing these stories among the people, Anansi doesn't just spread wisdom, he democratizes it, ensuring that knowledge isn't the sole property of the powerful. His actions challenge the status quo, forcing a shift in how power and wisdom are shared. What might seem like simple trickery is in fact a revolutionary act. This is the paradox of the trickster. Their methods are often chaotic, even morally ambiguous, but their impact can be transformative. They don't play by the rules, and that's precisely why they're so effective. By disrupting the norm, they expose hidden truths, challenge entrenched systems, and force societies to confront uncomfortable realities. Without tricksters, progress might stagnate and innovation could be stifled. Their unorthodox approaches remind us that growth often requires discomfort, and that change, even when it feels chaotic, can lead to something better. But here's the question: do the ends justify the means? Tricksters like Loki and Anansi operate in a gray area where their actions can't always be neatly labeled as good or bad. Their moral ambiguity forces us to grapple with the complexity of their roles. Are they heroes, villains, or something else entirely? This tension is what makes them so compelling. They defy easy categorization, embodying the messy, unpredictable nature of life itself. And perhaps that's their greatest trick of all, making us question not just the world around us, but our own assumptions about right and wrong. Trickster figures are masters of moral ambiguity, thriving in the space between right and wrong, where clear-cut answers simply don't exist. Take Loki, for instance. His betrayal of the Norse gods often brings chaos and destruction, but it also sparks change, forcing the gods to adapt and grow. Is he a villain, then, or a catalyst for transformation? The answer isn't so straightforward. Similarly, Hermes, the Greek god of trickery, is known for his clever thefts like stealing Apollo's cattle. Yet, his actions often lead to unexpected benefits, such as fostering creativity or resolving conflicts. These tricksters don't fit neatly into categories of good or evil. Instead, they challenge us to question our own assumptions about morality. This duality is what makes tricksters so compelling. They force us to grapple with the idea that actions can have both harmful and beneficial consequences, depending on the lens through which we view them. For example, Loki's schemes might cause pain, but they also expose vulnerabilities and truths that might otherwise remain hidden. Hermes' thefts, while seemingly selfish, often serve a greater purpose, like balancing power or teaching important lessons. These figures remind us that life isn't always black and white. Sometimes the most meaningful lessons come from the gray areas. This moral complexity doesn't just belong to ancient myths, it's alive and well in modern storytelling. Think of characters like the Joker in Batman or Deadpool in Marvel Comics. Both embody the trickster archetype, blurring the lines between hero and villain. They challenge audiences to think critically about justice, fairness, and the nature of right and wrong. By presenting flawed, unpredictable characters, modern storytellers continue the tradition of using tricksters to explore ethical dilemmas and provoke deeper reflection. It's a testament to how these ancient archetypes still resonate with us today, urging us to question, adapt, and grow. The trickster archetype didn't just vanish with ancient myths, it evolved, adapting to the stories we tell in modern times. Today, trickster figures are alive and well in literature, film, and television, often serving as mirrors to our own societal complexities. Take the Joker, for example. This iconic character from the Batman universe embodies chaos and rebellion, challenging the established order and forcing us to question the very nature of morality. He's unpredictable, subversive, and in many ways a direct descendant of figures like Loki or Anansi, who thrived on upending expectations and exposing the flaws in the systems around them. Then there's Deadpool, the wisecracking anti-hero who breaks the fourth wall, defies genre conventions, and constantly blurs the line between hero and villain. His irreverent humor and chaotic antics make him a quintessential modern trickster, one who not only entertains but also critiques the superhero genre itself. And let's not forget Bugs Bunny, yes, the cartoon rabbit. With his clever pranks and unshakable confidence, Bugs has been outsmarting authority figures for decades, proving that even in animation, tricksters remain a powerful force for challenging norms and celebrating wit over brute strength. What makes these modern tricksters so compelling is how they reflect the issues of our time. In a world where authority is often questioned and moral certainties are increasingly blurred, characters like the Joker or Deadpool resonate deeply. They represent rebellion, freedom, and the messy, complicated nature of human behavior. They remind us that life isn't black and white. It's full of gray areas, and sometimes the trickster is the one who forces us to confront that reality. The enduring appeal of tricksters lies in their ability to disrupt. Whether they're causing chaos in a comic book universe or outsmarting their foes in a cartoon, they challenge us to think differently, to question the status quo, and to embrace the unpredictable. And while their methods may have changed, their roots trace back to the ancient tricksters who first captured our imagination's figures like Hermes, who blurred the lines between gods and mortals, or Anansi, who used his cunning to navigate a world of power imbalances. In many ways, these modern tricksters are carrying on a tradition that stretches back thousands of years. They remind us that the trickster's role isn't just to entertain, it's to provoke thought, to challenge authority, and to reflect the ever-changing complexities of the human experience. And as long as we continue to grapple with questions of morality, power, and identity, the trickster will always have a place in our stories. Loki's journey from ancient myth to modern pop culture is nothing short of fascinating. In recent years, he's become one of the most recognizable figures in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a far cry from his origins in Norse mythology. But what is it about this trickster god that resonates so deeply with today's audiences? Perhaps it's his duality, his ability to be both charming and chaotic, heroic and villainous. In Marvel's portrayal, Loki is the ultimate anti-hero, a character who walks the line between good and evil, often leaving us wondering where his true loyalties lie. This complexity mirrors our own fascination with morally ambiguous characters, those who defy simple categorization and challenge our understanding of right and wrong. While Marvel's Loki retains some core traits from his mythological counterpart, his cunning, his unpredictability, his penchant for causing trouble, there are notable differences. In Norse myths, Loki is less of a tortured anti-hero and more of a pure trickster, a force of chaos who often acts out of self-interest or sheer mischief. He's not bound by the same moral dilemmas we see in his modern portrayal. Instead, he embodies the unpredictable nature of life itself. Yet both versions share a common thread: their ability to disrupt the status quo. Whether it's through Loki's schemes in Asgard or his manipulations in the MCU, he challenges authority, questions norms, and forces those around him to confront uncomfortable truths. What makes Loki so compelling in modern media is how relatable he feels despite his godly origins. His struggles with identity, his search for belonging, and his constant battle between loyalty and ambition are themes that echo in our own lives. He's a character who makes mistakes, who sometimes falls short, but who also possesses a deep vulnerability that makes him human. This blend of flaws and charisma is what keeps audiences captivated, rooting for him even when he's at his most mischievous. And Loki isn't the only trickster figure who's found new life in contemporary storytelling. Take Anansi, the spider trickster from African folklore, who's been reimagined in novels, comics, and even animated series. Like Loki, Anansi's modern adaptations often highlight his wit and resourcefulness, while also exploring deeper themes of survival, cultural identity, and the power of storytelling. These characters, rooted in ancient traditions, continue to evolve, reflecting the values and concerns of each new generation. Their enduring appeal lies in their ability to adapt to challenge and to remind us that sometimes the most profound truths come from the most unlikely sources. Anansi, the cunning spider from West African folklore, has not only survived the test of time but has thrived in modern storytelling, adapting to new mediums and resonating with contemporary audiences. One of the most notable examples of Anansi's modern reimagining is Neil Gaiman's Anansi Boys, a novel that brings the trickster's legacy into the 21st century. Here, Anansi's sons grapple with their father's larger-than-life shadow, weaving themes of identity, family, and resilience into a narrative that feels both timeless and refreshingly new. Gaiman's work captures the essence of Anansi's trickster spirit, his wit, his flaws, and his ability to turn even the most chaotic situations to his advantage, while also exploring how these traits shape the lives of those around him. It's a testament to how Anansi's stories continue to evolve, finding new ways to speak to universal human experiences. What makes Anansi so enduring isn't just his cleverness or his knack for outsmarting stronger opponents. It's his ability to reflect the complexities of life itself. In modern retellings, his trickster nature often serves as a mirror for themes of cultural heritage and the struggle to preserve identity in a rapidly changing world. Anansi's stories, rooted in oral traditions, have always been fluid, passed down through generations and reshaped by each storyteller. This adaptability is key to his survival. Whether in folktales, novels, or even animated series, Anansi's tales remind us of the power of storytelling to connect us to our roots while allowing for growth and reinterpretation. The role of oral traditions in preserving Anansi's legacy cannot be overstated. These stories were never meant to be static. They were living narratives told and retold with new twists and perspectives. This dynamic quality has allowed Anansi to remain relevant, speaking to audiences across cultures and eras. His ability to navigate tricky situations with humor and ingenuity makes him a symbol of resilience, a quality that resonates deeply in a world where many are grappling with questions of identity and belonging. As we consider Anansi's modern adaptations, it's impossible not to see the broader impact of trickster figures on cultural identity. They challenge norms, question authority, and often blur the lines between right and wrong, forcing us to think critically about the world around us. Anansi, like other tricksters, embodies the idea that life is rarely black and white. It's a web of complexities, and sometimes it takes a bit of mischief to find your way through. His stories remind us that even in the face of adversity, creativity and wit can be powerful tools for survival and transformation. Hermes, the swift-footed messenger of the gods, isn't just a relic of ancient myth. His spirit lives on in the stories we tell today. Think about the smooth-talking con artists in heist films, like Danny Ocean from Ocean's 11 or the clever masterminds in Leverage. These characters, with their quick wits and knack for bending the rules, owe a lot to Hermes' trickster legacy. They're not just thieves, they're charismatic problem solvers who outsmart the system, mirroring Hermes' ability to navigate boundaries and get what he wants through cunning rather than brute force. It's a reminder that, even in modern tales, the trickster archetype remains irresistibly compelling, but Hermes' influence doesn't stop at the silver screen. Take fantasy novels where tricksters like Loch Lamora from the Lies of Loch Lamora or Cave Varth from the Kinkiller Chronicle embody that same duality of charm and mischief. They're not just heroes or villains, they're complex figures who blur the lines, much like Hermes himself. These characters challenge authority, break conventions, and often use their cleverness to spark change, showing how the trickster's role as a disruptor and innovator still resonates today. What's even more fascinating is how Hermes' domain over communication and boundaries feels especially relevant in the digital age. In a world where information moves at the speed of light and virtual spaces redefine how we connect, Hermes becomes a fitting symbol. He's the patron of transitions between the physical and digital, the real and the virtual. Think about how social media influencers or hackers navigate these spaces, crafting narratives or bending systems to their will. They're modern-day Hermes figures, shaping stories and shifting boundaries in ways that would make the ancient god proud. And let's not forget Hermes' dual nature, his ability to be both a trickster and a guide, a thief and a protector. This duality inspires stories about transformation and reinvention. From tech innovators who disrupt industries to characters like Tony Stark, who evolved from self-serving tricksters into heroes, Hermes' legacy is alive in those who challenge norms and push humanity forward. His archetype reminds us that change often comes from those who dare to think differently, even if their methods are unorthodox. As we reflect on Hermes' modern interpretations, it's clear that the trickster archetype is timeless. Whether in ancient myths or contemporary stories, these figures captivate us because they embody the chaos and creativity that drive human progress. They challenge us to question authority, embrace change, and find humor in the unexpected. And as long as we keep telling stories, the spirit of Hermes and tricksters like him will continue to inspire, provoke, and entertain. Now, let's dive into the psychological depths of trickster figures and uncover why these mischievous characters resonate so deeply within us. At their core, tricksters are more than just troublemakers or comic relief. They're mirrors reflecting the parts of ourselves we often hide or ignore. Think about the shadow self, a concept introduced by Carl Jung, which represents the darker, repressed aspects of our personality, those desires, fears, and impulses we'd rather not acknowledge. Tricksters, in many ways, embody this shadow. They act out what we might secretly think or feel but never dare to express. Loki, for instance, with his unpredictable nature and penchant for chaos, isn't just causing trouble for the gods of Asgard. He's forcing them to confront the instability and unpredictability they'd prefer to ignore. Joseph Campbell's work on the hero's journey also sheds light on the trickster's role in mythology. Tricksters often appear at moments of transition or crisis, disrupting the status quo and forcing characters, and by extension us, to adapt and grow. They're the agents of chaos who push us out of our comfort zones, challenging us to face the unknown. Take Anansi, the spider trickster from African folklore, who uses his cunning to manipulate situations and expose the flaws in rigid systems. His stories aren't just entertaining, they're lessons in flexibility and resilience, showing us how to navigate life's uncertainties with creativity and wit. But why do we need these chaotic figures in our stories? On a personal level, tricksters help us confront the parts of ourselves we'd rather keep buried. They remind us that growth often comes from discomfort and that embracing our imperfections can lead to deeper self-awareness. On a societal level, tricksters challenge norms and question authority, forcing communities to reevaluate their values and beliefs. Hermes, the Greek messenger god, isn't just a clever thief. He's a boundary crosser moving between the mortal and divine worlds, symbolizing the fluidity of identity and the breaking of rigid rules. Ultimately, tricksters force us to ask, who are we really? They blur the lines between right and wrong, order and chaos, self and other. In doing so, they challenge us to expand our understanding of identity, showing us that growth often lies in embracing the contradictions within ourselves. And as we'll see next, this theme of identity and transformation becomes even more fascinating when we look at how tricksters shape the stories of heroes and societies. Trickster figures are masters of transformation, not just in their actions but in their very essence. They defy the rigid lines that societies often draw, lines separating gender, species, and even morality. Take Loki, for instance. In Norse mythology, Loki is notorious for his shape-shifting abilities, morphing into everything from a salmon to a mare to a giantess. This fluidity isn't just for show, it's a direct challenge to the fixed identities and roles that cultures often impose. Loki's transformations force us to question, why should anyone or anything be confined to a single form or purpose? Then there's Anansi, the spider trickster from West African folklore. Anansi's ability to shift between human and spider forms is more than a clever trick. It's a metaphor for adaptability. In a world where survival often depends on quick thinking and flexibility, Anansi embodies the idea that identity isn't static. It's something that can change, evolve, and even surprise us. By blurring the boundaries between human and animal, Anansi reminds us that the lines we draw between species are often more cultural than natural. These tricksters don't just play with their own identities, they challenge the very frameworks of the societies they inhabit. Their ambiguity makes them powerful symbols of transformation and self-discovery. In a world that often demands conformity, tricksters like Loki and Anansi encourage us to embrace complexity and fluidity. They show us that identity isn't a cage but a canvas, open to endless reinterpretation. And it's this very ambiguity that allows tricksters to play such a pivotal role in shaping cultural narratives. They don't just exist within stories, they shape the way those stories are told. By embodying the unexpected, they push cultures to confront their own assumptions and rethink their values. In doing so, they become more than characters, they become mirrors, reflecting the ever-changing nature of human identity and the societies we build. So, as we dive deeper into the cultural impact of these trickster figures, let's consider how their fluid identities have influenced the way we see ourselves and the world around us. Their stories are more than myths, they're invitations to explore the boundaries of what it means to be human. Now, let's turn our attention to one of the most fascinating roles tricksters play, not just as characters within stories, but as the storytellers themselves. Take Anansi, the spider trickster from West African folklore. Anansi isn't just a clever figure who outsmarts others. He's also the weaver of tales, spinning intricate stories that captivate listeners and carry deeper meanings. In many ways, Anansi embodies the very essence of storytelling, entertaining, yes, but also teaching, challenging, and connecting people through shared narratives. What makes tricksters like Anansi such compelling storytellers? It's their unique blend of wit, humor, and unpredictability. Their stories aren't just told, they're performed, often with a mischievous twist that keeps audiences on their toes. For example, in one famous Anansi tale, he uses his cunning to outsmart a leopard, a hornet, and even a fairy, all to win a box of stories from the sky god Niamh. But here's the thing, this isn't just a story about a spider's cleverness. It's a metaphor for the power of knowledge and the importance of sharing wisdom. Through his antics, Anansi becomes a keeper of tradition, passing down lessons that shape the values and beliefs of his culture. And it's not just Anansi. Tricksters across mythologies often serve as bridges between the mundane and the profound. Their stories, filled with humor and mischief, are deceptively simple. Yet, beneath the surface, they tackle universal themes: greed, justice, resilience, and the consequences of our actions. In Norse mythology, Loki's schemes often lead to chaos, but they also force the gods to confront their flaws and grow. In Native American traditions, Coyote's trickery teaches balance and respect for nature. These stories aren't just entertaining, they're tools for cultural transmission, preserving wisdom and moral instruction across generations. But why do tricksters make such effective narrators? Perhaps it's because they're relatable. Their flaws mirror our own, their greed, their pride, their tendency to push boundaries. Yet, they also possess a spark of ingenuity that inspires. They remind us that even in the face of adversity, creativity and quick thinking can lead to unexpected solutions. And because of this, their stories resonate deeply. They're not just about gods or mythical creatures, they're about us, our struggles, our triumphs, and the lessons we learn along the way. So the next time you hear a trickster tale, consider what it's really saying. Beyond the laughter and the clever twists, these stories are a reflection of the human experience, our curiosity, our mistakes, and our quest for understanding. They remind us that wisdom doesn't always come from solemn lectures. Sometimes it's wrapped in humor, mischief, and a little bit of chaos. And that's the magic of the trickster. They make the profound accessible, the serious playful, and the universal personal. Trickster figures are more than just mischief makers, they're often the architects of the world itself. In creation myths across cultures, these cunning characters use their wit, chaos, and unpredictability to shape the very fabric of existence. Take Loki, for instance, from Norse mythology. While he's often remembered for his troublemaking, his actions were instrumental in the creation of humanity. It was Loki who, through a series of deceptions and schemes, indirectly helped the gods craft the first humans from pieces of wood. His chaotic methods weren't just for show, they were necessary to break the mold of what was possible, pushing the boundaries of creation. Then there's Anansi, the spider trickster from West African folklore. Anansi didn't just spin webs, he spun stories. In one famous tale, he convinces the sky god Niamh to share the world's stories with humanity, using his cleverness to outwit the divine. By doing so, Anansi didn't just bring stories to the world, he gave people the tools to understand it, to connect, and to create their own narratives. His trickery wasn't destructive, it was transformative, proving that even the most chaotic actions can lead to profound cultural and intellectual growth. What's fascinating about these tricksters is how their disruptive nature mirrors the very process of creation itself. Creation is rarely a smooth, orderly process. It's messy, unpredictable, and often requires breaking the rules. Tricksters embody this truth, showing us that sometimes chaos is the catalyst for something new and extraordinary. Their presence in these myths reminds us that disruption isn't just a force of destruction, it's a necessary spark for innovation and change. But the role of tricksters doesn't end with creation. In many myths, they also play a crucial part in destruction, often setting the stage for renewal. Whether it's Loki's role in Ragnarok or Anansi's involvement in tales where old worlds must fall to make way for new ones, tricksters are there, weaving their unpredictable magic. Their chaotic energy doesn't just build, it also dismantles, creating space for something new to emerge. And that's where their true power lies, in their ability to challenge the status quo, to disrupt, and to inspire transformation, even when it comes at a cost. Tricksters, by their very nature, thrive in the space between order and chaos, but sometimes their actions tip the scales into outright destruction. Take Loki, for example, the Norse trickster whose schemes often spiral far beyond his control. In the lead up to Ragnarok, the apocalyptic end of the world in Norse mythology, Loki's role is pivotal. His involvement in the death of the beloved god Baldur sets off a chain reaction of events that culminates in the downfall of the gods. Yet, even in this destruction, there's a twist. Ragnarok isn't just an end, it's also a new beginning. From the ashes of the old world, a new one rises, fertile and full of potential. Loki's chaos, destructive as it may seem, ultimately clears the way for renewal. Similarly, Anansi, the spider trickster from West African folklore, often dances on the edge of destruction. In some tales, his cleverness leads to unintended consequences, like when his greed or curiosity causes a village to suffer, or when his meddling disrupts the natural order. Yet, even in these moments, there's a deeper lesson. Anansi's antics often expose flaws in systems or people, forcing them to confront their shortcomings and grow. His chaos, much like Loki's, isn't just random mischief, it's a catalyst for transformation. This duality is a hallmark of trickster figures. They embody the tension between creation and destruction, showing us that one can't exist without the other. In mythological cycles, chaos isn't the enemy of order, it's its necessary counterpart. Without destruction, there can be no renewal. Without disruption, there can be no progress. Tricksters remind us that life is a constant balancing act, and their stories often reflect the messy, unpredictable nature of existence. So, while it's easy to see tricksters as agents of chaos, their true role is far more nuanced. They're the disruptors who shake things up, forcing both gods and mortals to adapt, evolve, and sometimes start over. And in that process, they reveal a deeper truth, that destruction, when viewed through the lens of mythology, is often the first step toward something new. Trickster figures are fascinating because they refuse to fit neatly into any single category. They exist in a space between chaos and order, destruction and creation, wisdom and folly. This duality is what makes them so compelling and so deeply human. Take Hermes, for example. In Greek mythology, he's the god of thieves and trickery, known for his cunning and mischief. But he's also a protector of travelers, a guide for souls to the underworld, and a messenger of the gods. He's both a disruptor and a stabilizer, embodying the tension between opposing forces. Similarly, Loki in Norse mythology is a master of deception, often causing trouble for the gods. Yet he's also instrumental in solving problems, using his wit and resourcefulness to help them when it suits him. These figures remind us that life is rarely black and white. It's full of contradictions and complexities. Their stories challenge us to think beyond binaries. Tricksters don't just blur the line between good and evil, they erase it entirely. They show us that creation often comes from destruction and wisdom can emerge from folly. In doing so, they reflect the messy, unpredictable nature of human existence. Think about it. How often do we find ourselves torn between competing desires or forced to navigate situations where there's no clear right or wrong? Trickster figures, with their dual nature, embody that struggle. They remind us that growth often comes from chaos and that sometimes the most profound truths are found in the gray areas. This duality also makes tricksters enduringly relevant. Their stories resonate across cultures and centuries because they speak to something fundamental about the human experience. They challenge us to embrace complexity, to question rigid systems of thought, and to find meaning in the unexpected. Whether it's Hermes guiding souls through the unknown or Loki weaving chaos into the fabric of the gods' lives, these figures remind us that life is a balancing act, one that requires both wisdom and a healthy dose of mischief. Trickster figures aren't just mischievous characters, they're mirrors reflecting the flaws and contradictions of the societies they inhabit. Through their cunning and wit, they often become powerful tools for social commentary, highlighting issues like inequality, hypocrisy, and the abuse of authority. Think about Anansi, the clever spider from West African folklore. He's known for outsmarting those in power, turning their arrogance and greed against them. In one famous tale, Anansi tricks the sky god Niame into giving him all the stories in the world, not through brute strength but through cleverness and resourcefulness. This isn't just entertainment, it's a critique of how power operates and a reminder that even the smallest among us can challenge the mightiest. Then there's Loki, the Norse trickster whose defiance of the gods often exposes their flaws. While the gods of Asgard represent order and authority, Loki's chaotic nature reveals their hypocrisy. He questions their decisions, undermines their plans, and sometimes even succeeds in making them look foolish. His actions force us to confront the uncomfortable truth that those in power aren't always as just or infallible as they claim to be. And in doing so, Loki becomes a voice for those who feel disenfranchised or overlooked by the systems that govern them. What makes tricksters so compelling is their ability to speak to the experiences of marginalized groups. Their stories often resonate with people who have been pushed to the edges of society, offering a sense of empowerment and hope. Through their cleverness, tricksters show that the underdog can outwit the oppressor, that the rules of the game can be bent or broken, and that resistance is possible even in the face of overwhelming odds. These tales inspire us to question the status quo and imagine a world where justice isn't just reserved for the powerful. But tricksters don't just challenge authority, they also shape cultural values. By exposing societal flaws, they force communities to reflect on their own behaviors and beliefs. Anansi's stories, for example, aren't just about outsmarting others. their lessons in resourcefulness, adaptability, and the importance of wit over brute force. Similarly, Loki's antics remind us that blind obedience to authority can be dangerous, and that questioning the powerful is sometimes necessary for progress. In this way, tricksters aren't just disruptors, they're educators, teaching us to see the world in new ways. As we consider their role in shaping cultural values, it's worth asking, what can these ancient stories teach us about our own world today? How might the cleverness of a trickster inspire us to challenge the systems that perpetuate inequality and injustice? It's fascinating how tricksters, these chaotic and often morally ambiguous figures, can also be seen as cultural heroes. Think about it, they're not just mischief makers, they're agents of change, bringing gifts, knowledge, or tools that reshape the world. Take Anansi, the spider god from West African folklore. He's clever, yes, and sometimes downright sneaky, but his cunning isn't just for personal gain. In one famous tale, Anansi outsmarts the sky god Niame to obtain the world's stories that were hoarded away from humanity. By tricking Niame, Anansi doesn't just win for himself, he brings these stories down to earth, enriching human culture forever. It's a reminder that even self-serving actions can have profound, far-reaching benefits for everyone. Then there's Hermes, the quick-witted messenger god of Greek mythology. Known for his love of pranks, Hermes is also credited with inventing the lyre, a musical instrument that would become a cornerstone of ancient Greek culture. The story goes that he crafted the lyre from a tortoise shell shortly after his birth, showing off his ingenuity even as a newborn. But here's the twist, Hermes didn't create the lyre out of pure altruism. He was trying to appease Apollo, whom he just angered by stealing his cattle. Yet, in the end, his cleverness not only got him out of trouble, but also gave humanity a gift that inspired art, music, and storytelling for generations. What's remarkable about these tricksters is how they embody the duality of human nature. They're flawed, yes, often selfish, impulsive, and even reckless. But they are also resourceful, inventive, and unafraid to challenge the status quo. Their actions, while sometimes questionable, often lead to breakthroughs that benefit society as a whole. They remind us that progress isn't always clean or morally straightforward. Sometimes it takes a bit of chaos, a dash of mischief, and a whole lot of ingenuity to move the world forward. Even beyond mythology, these trickster figures leave a lasting legacy. They're symbols of resilience and adaptability, showing us that creativity and resourcefulness can overcome even the most daunting challenges. Whether it's Anansi's stories or Hermes' lyre, their contributions remind us that sometimes the greatest gifts come from the most unexpected places. And perhaps that's why, despite their flaws, tricksters continue to captivate us. They challenge us to think differently, to embrace complexity, and to find value in the unconventional. Trickster figures like Loki, Anansi, and Hermes have left an indelible mark on mythology, but their influence stretches far beyond ancient tales. These characters, with their wit, unpredictability, and ability to navigate the gray areas of morality, have become enduring symbols of change and creativity. They remind us that life is rarely black and white, and that sometimes it's the trickster who shakes things up, forcing us to see the world in a new light. Their stories aren't just entertaining, they're mirrors reflecting the complexities of human nature and the challenges we face. Take Loki, for instance. His schemes often lead to chaos, but they also spark transformation. Without his meddling, the gods might never grow or adapt. Anansi, the spider from West African folklore, uses his cleverness to outsmart those more powerful than him, teaching us that intelligence and resourcefulness can triumph over brute strength. And Hermes, the Greek messenger god, bridges the gap between worlds, embodying the fluidity of communication and the power of connection. Each of these figures, in their own way, embodies resilience, a quality that resonates deeply with audiences across time and culture. What makes tricksters so compelling is their ability to challenge authority and disrupt the status quo. They don't play by the rules, and in doing so, they force us to question the rules themselves. Their moral ambiguity invites us to grapple with uncomfortable truths, that good and evil aren't always clear-cut, and that sometimes the path to progress is messy and uncertain. These aren't just lessons from old myths, they're reflections of the world we live in today, where change is constant and adaptability is key. As we wrap up our exploration of trickster figures, it's worth reflecting on what their stories mean for us. In a world that often demands certainty and order, tricksters remind us to embrace the unknown, to find strength in flexibility, and to see the potential for creativity in chaos. They challenge us to think differently, to question assumptions, and to find humor and wisdom in life's unpredictability. And perhaps most importantly, they teach us that even in the face of adversity, there's always a way to weave a new story, one that's as clever, resilient, and endlessly fascinating as the tricksters themselves. So, as we wrap up our journey into the world of trickster figures, let's take a moment to reflect on what makes these characters so endlessly fascinating. Whether it's Loki's chaotic mischief, Anansi's clever schemes, or Hermes' boundary-crossing antics, tricksters are more than just troublemakers, they're mirrors of humanity itself. They challenge us to question the very foundations of morality, identity, and the rules that govern our societies. They remind us that life isn't always black and white, that chaos can sometimes lead to creation, and that even the most disruptive forces can bring about change. These figures are defined by their duality. They're neither entirely good nor entirely evil, and that's what makes them so relatable. They embody the contradictions within us all, our capacity for both creativity and destruction, wisdom and folly, laughter and tears. Through their stories, we see the world in a new light, one where the unexpected becomes a source of growth and transformation. But beyond their personal traits, tricksters hold immense cultural significance. They're storytellers, teachers, and disruptors who shape the myths and values of entire civilizations. Loki's mischief reshapes the Norse cosmos, Anansi's wit preserves the wisdom of African traditions, and Hermes bridges the gap between gods and mortals, guiding souls and messages alike. Their tales remind us that myths aren't just ancient stories, they're living, breathing reflections of the human experience. As we close this chapter, let's leave you with a thought from Joseph Campbell, who once said, "The trickster is the mythic embodiment of ambiguity and ambivalence, the very spirit of transformation." These figures, with all their complexity, invite us to embrace the unpredictable, to laugh at life's absurdities, and to find meaning in the chaos. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Which trickster figure resonates with you the most? Is it Loki's unpredictable nature, Anansi's cunning charm, or Hermes' boundless energy? Share your favorite trickster stories or thoughts in the comments below. We're excited to hear your perspectives. And if you've enjoyed diving into the world of mythology with us, don't forget to subscribe for more explorations into the myths, legends, and stories that shape our world. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, sometimes a little mischief can lead to the greatest revelations.